the words have been chosen very carefully, so if you can listen carefully too, that would be good. So, the issue of religion and society is very complex. It has impacts at different scales, from the interpersonal, how I behave with you, up to our collectives and organisations, neighbourhoods, cities, and countries. The instinct in our team was to focus on the smaller scale and then move up and out to larger scales. We agreed that we want to live in a pluralist society, and that this, we explored what pluralism might be, and one of the things we locked onto was that it requires some minimum consensus, so we can all agree we shouldn't kill each other, but then beyond that it requires a lot more room for autonomy and agency and respect for difference than we usually get to enjoy. So our attitudes to difference, the attitudes that we each carry, can be incompatible with our desire to be pluralistic. And yet attitudes can change. We, as organised citizens, so individual autonomous citizens and also citizens that have come together in organisation, can find our place on the document, and then we can host carefully designed spaces where we encounter difference in a way that shifts our attitudes. Difference provokes big feelings in people. You might believe abortion is about women's freedom, whereas someone else might believe abortion is about killing babies. Those are big differences that create big feelings. And small differences can create big feelings too. Entire religious communities have split over a difference of interpretation of one line of scripture. The aim of these spaces of encounter is for people's feelings to build a bridge of empathy for the other rather than a canyon of mistrust or dismissal. We have opportunities to provoke people to grow towards more pluralistic attitudes at many scales, and we could find many examples. As an individual, you can replace demands with requests. When you tell me that I should do something, it implies that you know what's best for me. But if you tell me I could do it, that emphasizes my freedom of choice and my agency. And these small linguistic changes may help to shift my attitude, but of course they're not going to resolve the urgent social crises that we're concerned about. So at a slightly larger scale, in our neighbourhoods, we can do things like hosting social events, offering free food, games, dancing, just anything that brings people together. And events of that nature, they're just very informal, easy, accessible events, can help a neighbourhood of diverse residents to become much more harmonious as they exchange stories and discover similarities that they value more than their differences. Some cities, so going even larger in scale, some cities and countries are hosting deliberations where people practice the skill of finding agreement despite their differences. And this is where I've injected myself much more loudly than the rest of the team to highlight again, see for instance, the story of how taxi drivers, Uber drivers, city officials and citizens collaboratively wrote the new transport legislation for Taiwan. And I keep highlighting that because Taiwan is at least a generation ahead of their democratic forms than any other country I've encountered, and no one I've met in Europe seems to give a damn about it. So I've included a link to a story that will introduce you to it if you're interested in that publication. So anyway, across all these scales, we notice people's personal, unpolished stories make a big difference. When I hear you tell your own story, in your own voice, when I hear the full nuance of your experience with both your observations and your sensations, then I'm invited to empathize. I and they become we.
So I was thinking about the Christian Union at the university I went to, and they would host these free barbecues, and students are always broke, right? So free food, amazing. So that space to go and mix in a really casual environment and eat food together, that's a really powerful thing. So this is about that. What's better than burgers? Free burgers. Burgers with cheese and ketchup and slightly burnt edges. Yes, we must all cry and laugh and mourn and seethe, but before that, we must eat. What's better than biscuits? Free biscuits. Listen, that elderly gay man and that young Muslim fella have been arguing for the past 40 minutes about scriptures and coloured flags and the fears that set their teeth to carnage every night, and now they are laughing. They both separate the custard cream into 2 parts, scraping off the filling with their teeth before eating the biscuit bit. Everyone else thinks that's weird, but they know that that's the real way. Does everyone know what a custard cream is? The biscuit. I don't know if that's a British thing, but it's kind of like an Oreo, right? And it's like just like, yeah, 2 biscuits with some cream in the middle. And like everybody has their way of eating it, right? And that could be a pretty unifying thing. It's not a policy or revolution or a UN-approved proposal, but we must all argue and wrestle and posture in Parliament in suits and fight in marches and conferences and panels, but before that, we must eat. And what's better than free food? Free burgers, free biscuits, custard creams split down the middle. If you give me a seed, I'll give you a story. And everyone loves a good story. And this one is a farmer with skin like the tough older brother of leather. And he grows a crop that was close to death. He once grew this grain to be shipped thousands of miles away. Now it is pride of place on plates in his village. He hums songs to himself as he works. He never used to do that. Put that one in the soil. Let it grow. And this one, with a girl whose grandfather is teaching her how to cook, who can show her the tree that grew that apple from their window. And she is incessantly curious. She will sit in the garden and plunge her fingers into the earth. Did I grow from this ground, Grandad? She asks. Like a seed, Grandad. Yes, he says. You are a seed, my dear. You are a story. Put that one in the soil. Let it grow. And this one is a woman who told her mother, who told his boyfriend, who told their MP, who told their party that water is a right and not a cash cow. And people started to flex their fingers, feel the sensation of hot shower water on their skin as if for the first time. They began to whisper their prayers to the sea. The sound of rain after the longest drought was 1,000 nameless deities giving an answer. Put that one in the soil. Let it grow. Let it all grow. Though it might grow slowly or sideways or not at all, put it all in the soil and let it grow. For every seed there's a story. This is just one of many.
What is required is how to bring balance. Nature, the biosphere, has inherent mechanism to keep the balance. A forest that is burned has already foreseen to bury seeds. So in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, there is regeneration coming. So nature has balance inherently embedded in its own very existence. The hypothesis is that societies, political societies, also have those mechanisms embedded into their own structures. Politics, biosphere politics, should be also about bringing balance, equilibrium, homeostasis. When you are down, there is something to bring you at balance. When you're high, there is also something to bring you at balance. There are different interesting ideas that have been heard during these last 3 days in our panel. There were also a mixture of emotions within the team. I think at the end we all reached at least a minimum consensus, which is quite remarkable given that we are coming from so many backgrounds, from so many starting points, so many different cultures. Well, not so many, 5. But yeah, this idea of how to restore balance, how we can learn from each other, how we can learn from nature, and how we can learn from best practices that exist already. The constitutional recognition of the rights of Mother Earth that takes place in Bolivia or Ecuador. How can we teach citizens and educate younger generations on the type of survival skills that are required for the species' own survival? How to grow food, how to repair your shoes, so you don't have to buy new ones every now and then. Issues related to the privatization of the water and other resources, issues related to the commons, the collective management and ownership of resources is the centerpiece of the biosphere politics. And then again, of course, how we can find the balance within our societies as part of the biosphere, not that humans are in the middle and then you have this philosophical space which is called the environment that environ us, that we know that we have to protect, but every now and then we can pull back and sacrifice some of it, and then we have Greenpeace and civil society fighting for it. How can we change those cycles? The idea of the commons is something that I think resonated very well with the team, because it puts more values into the game, into the table, values other than profit. Things like transparency, things like social justice, things like respect to cultures far away. For example, when you talk about free burgers, my personal opinion is that there should be no free food. Free food is not good for the farmers. But free food for all is a good idea to explore. I want to open to the team to ask if there are any keywords that I'm forgetting at this moment. The power of narratives.
Establish the rights of nature at a constitutional level.
Yeah, there are several. I'm particularly attracted by this big list of what we should do that you provided. All this is recorded. The importance of constructive narratives that will consider the rights of nature when talking to politics, when talking to the market, and how it is supposed to be creating jobs for people. The narratives that we have to give to the society, the type of social narratives through education. And of course the importance of testing all those amazing ideas in real life examples, no matter how small or how big. Maybe we can start with a village, maybe we can start with our neighborhood, or even by our own home. But it is important to test these ideas in real life conditions and try to find ways how these prototypes, social prototypes of the biosphere economy, biosphere politics, can be scaled and communicated to every town and every village in our countries and hence in the world. Sorry, it's a little bit too early for me in the day, but I hope I summarized what we have been discussing in a minimum valuable. Who said that yesterday? Minimum valuable consensus. Minimum valuable consensus. Yeah. So I think that was a minimum viable consensus for the time being. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to tell you a little story about money and funding civil society. I'm going to talk up so my actors can hear me. I'm your narrator. Once upon a time, there was a young lady called Sybil. Civil society. Civil society had much passion. She knew that she had to play a role in helping civil society to push democracy. But she was time-bound, she was time-constrained, and she was also resource-constrained. She needed to come up with new ways of resourcing her organisation. So she organised meetings. One day, Mr. Corporate came along. He came along with his checkbook. Mr. Corporate said, "I'm very happy to fund you, Sybil, but you're going to have to do exactly what I want you to do." Sybil said, "No, this is not how civil society will hold you to account. Go away, I've had enough." So she organised another meeting. The second day, the government representative came. "Hello, Sybil, I would like to fund you, but I've got an awful lot of regulation that you need to complete. Could you fill and sign every single piece of documentation that I've given to you? It'll restrict your ability to protest, to actually do what you need to do, but you will get your money." "No, no," said Sybil, "I will not do that. I know the gold standard is membership fees, but how? Membership fees, it's not enough. People will not engage if I simply just offer them a newsletter every month. How do I get more resources into my organisation?" Luckily, later that week, she was attending a cybernetics protocol event. And she had a brainstorm because she had 30 people and 20 notes and 12 conversations, and from that came this idea, a new form of shares. A new form of shares. A form of shares where people can buy into my organisation. I can promulgate democracy because I can give them a vote. But it won't be however many shares is however much voting power they have. It'll be innovative types. It'll be shares which are different powers, whether it's an organisation investing or an individual investing. And people can invest financially or non-financially. Yes, this could really push democracy. It could create co-design, and it could give me more stable income. So she created an online platform, and she put it out cross boundaries, looking for people who wanted to join the mission. And one day Matthew Ember, Mr. Member, was on the internet. He was looking, he found this page. He thought, that is something I'm passionate about. And wow, I can have co-ownership, I can have co-design as part of this organisation. But I am still time-bound. I am a single father, and where do I find the time? But no, Sybil had already thought of that. She had a time-banking section to her platform, and she could put Matthew in contact with other single parents who could look after little Matthew and give him the time to participate. And Sybil was happy, because she had created a more diverse set of resources. She had strengthened her organisation, and ultimately she had done what civil society was meant to do, and in the process made her own organisation more democratic and also pushed democracy.
Clearly, in the past few years, even the past decade or so, there has been an increase in support and a rise and an emergence of some new forms of far-right movements. And our discussion of what was at the root of these is, we felt that dismissing them as just based on ignorance or selfishness wasn't doing justice to what was rooted and the kind of source of these movements and parties. We thought that the source was to do with structural and systemic reasons, and of course there are many reasons for the rise of these parties, and they differ according to different countries and different contexts. But some of the themes that emerged were rising inequality between different groups, stagnating wages for a number of years, and also, aside from these economic reasons, a feeling among many people of a kind of erosion of their identity. So these are some of the reasons that came up. And then I guess tacking on to these structural, foundational reasons for the emergence of these groups, we had these parties and movements that were very effective at mobilizing some people who were at the brunt of these trends, and mobilizing basically, and the way that we characterized it was people who were not quite the worst off, and turning them against people who were the worst off in society, rather than turning against maybe some of the structural and systemic reasons that were at the root of the problems themselves. And indeed, the parties and movements were very effective at doing this because they had used a discourse of people, pure people, versus this idea of the corrupt elite. And I guess we also talked on drawing on some of the comments made by some of the other groups that, taken at other countries where these movements haven't emerged, for instance, Spain and Iceland, there have been alternative movements that have sprung up and that have mobilized these injustices and frustrations in different directions. And so the fact that these movements weren't emerging in some contexts was one reason why the far right had done so well and had captured the moment in other contexts. But pass on to someone else to talk about the next bit.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. I wanted to present a framework that we discussed, which, although was situated on the case of far right and racism, we think could be extended to the general discussion. Basically, that there were three paradigms, three ways of looking at all the different problems, and according to who was in the table and the issue at hand, one of the three tend to come before the other. These are, firstly, the politics of goodness, which basically was the idea that if you manage people to have empathy with another person or to humanize the other person, then those people, because of a good nature, the human good nature, will stop whatever activity is hurting that other person and will some way find a meaningful relation, a meaningful connection to that other person, and therefore you would solve the problem at hand. In this case, one of the things that they're going to describe later on is the idea that if we make the locals and the immigrants meet together, they could form bonds and become more self-aware and aware of the other person, and they could have some sort of an emotional relationship with that big other. I think we all agreed that that was the best solution that we had, like the best solution we could imagine. But the questioning came from how feasible is it, how real is it in the possibility to, for example, prevent Brexit. And what we said is, like Marley said before, we should be careful about thinking that the core of the problem is somewhere in selfishness or ignorance, and we should open ourselves to a more complex situation. Like, for example, a person really empathizing and understanding the immigrants, but at the moment he has to vote, he has his family, he has his job, and he can even be really sad for what is happening to immigrants and still decide to vote for Brexit, for example. And therefore, even though perhaps the politics of goodness could be the best way to solve the problem if it worked, we were not so certain that at least in a large scale level, would it work or not, but it could work in a local level. So that was the politics of goodness. Then the politics of anger, which was the idea that we are living in a social and political context in which many of the reasons why we organize, mobilize, and build certain things is because we're angry. And basically angry with a certain group of people. Some accuse them of being having betrayed the faith that was given into them, that they're corrupt, that they are sold out, and many other names that have come in different discussion. So in this case, the politics of anger have one way of manifesting, and they can be, for example, the politics of society versus the politician, the corrupt politician. But the problem with anger politics is that they can go any way. They are like a big gun that can shoot any way. So sometimes they can also be taken by this far right and racist movements. So that same anger that is directed towards the immigrants, for example. So this politics by its own are not enough to understand the complexity of the problem. And thirdly, there was the politics of power, which perhaps is a more traditional view of politics, a view that I think came into a lot of critique, and a lot of people dislike this view of politics in many of the tables. And it's perhaps a view detached of feelings. It's a view that tries to have an objective situation be solved, and therefore by resolving the objective problems, in somehow people will change actions, to summarize the idea. And how would this implement to the refugees and immigrant relation to the locals? Well, what Marley said before, that in a way anti-immigration feeling is the almost poorest people enacting certain problems by having to compete with the poorest people. And if you could manage to somehow resolve the structural issues, or the way that their jobs are lost, and their social security is lost, and the way that there is certain families relations they lost, if you could solve that, then I'm almost done. If you could solve that, then you could bring together both immigrants and locals, and we said perhaps the welfare state is a way to do it.
Okay, my part was to get a more concrete and possible solutions for social society, but I just want to give you a picture. I was inspired by the story Richard told us about his life, that we could paint a picture that everybody deserves a home. Just a little space where everybody is safe, as long as he wants to live in there, where he's free of violence, where he or she can express herself, where she gets love and care, food, not in luxury, but the little we really need, but to have it safe and long-term. And this for everybody, not only for the immigrants who come here and have no roof and no security at all, but for everybody, also for the people who fear diversity and immigrants, and also for the people in Africa who lose their land. Like a picture we can put on the wall and say, this is what we, this is what we really need for everybody, and then everybody can grow and develop, and everybody deserves it. And I believe that lots of people will say, yes, that's right. Just a little, but for everybody.